Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Earthly Headlines. I came across a really cool article regarding the Caucasus region of Russia, and as you may or may not know, they found a few Neanderthal skeletons there. They did a little bit more analysis on the ancient populations dating back between 40,000 and 140,000 years ago. That time range is a huge time range. They observed and studied the obsidian tools there, and there's a lot of interesting facts about obsidian that I feel like I kind of knew but I overlooked. Some of the analyzed samples of the volcanic glass they found in Kabardino-Balkaria region, close to Armenia and Azerbaijan. So 70,000 years ago, they figured out that the Neanderthals mined this material, so to speak, and transferred them out up to 250 kilometers from where they, quote, manufactured it. So how they figured it out was pretty interesting. So obsidian is a very unique mineral that's actually a mixture of a bunch of minerals that come together after it cools off after an eruption. That means it has its own unique marker, because not all obsidian is created equal. So obsidian in, let's say, Hawaii would have a different makeup and a different mineral makeup and a different marker, so to speak, because its concentrations will differ from a different volcano. So each volcano creates its own unique obsidian, which is really cool. So they tracked all the ones that they found over the years in the archaeological record, and then they looked at the mixtures of the minerals, and they found that these were the same one. They all came from the same place, so to speak. And this is back 100,000 or 70,000 years ago, up to 140,000 years, I think, as the oldest. So they had been passing this around. So what kind of implications does that reveal to us? Well, one is they probably had some sort of trade network or some sort of culture that encouraged this first of all, using tools, and second of all, the fact that these tools are traveling huge distances, presumably on foot, speaks volumes of what sort of mysterious culture was going on back then. Because we're made to believe that these people were just living in camps to themselves amongst each other, but not really interacting. Although it's been heavily speculated that they have been interacting in some sort of way, there was just no hard evidence for it. And I know a lot of my videos I talk about how important hard evidence is to get any sort of movement going in academia, especially. They determined precisely the specific archaeological site where the obsidian sample originated from. They found the obsidian transferred from one settlement to another over time, and the distance of its transportation increased from 100 to 700 kilometers. Wow. Okay, that's pretty far-ranging. So was it an empire? What was going on back then? Was it all mutually understood society where it was mutually understood that we were trying to help each other out? Was there no war or disputes or anything like that? So far, there's been no evidence of those types of conflicts. But then again, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, so who knows what's left. So this non-profit organization called the Laboratory of Prehistory analyzed the elemental composition of these obsidian samples from the various Neanderthal sites in central and northwestern Caucasus, so around here and basically this entire central part between Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Russia. It turned out to be almost identical for a lot of the tools, and from there they know that they came from a common origin. The data also indicates that the obsidian was transported over more than 250 kilometers in central Caucasus to northwest Caucasus during the Middle Paleolithic, and at the same time, Central Caucasus populations cultural tradition differed from the Neanderthals of the northwest Caucasus. So even though their cultural tradition were different between the two regions in the central and the northwest, they still had the same tools. So that means were there two different nations? Was it more like the North American Native Americans, where they were from different tribes, but they mutually agreed to trade and help each other out while recognizing their cultural differences? So there's a lot of questions now as to what was going on back then, because clearly their cultural tradition was different, but then clearly they had the same tools from the same area. So there must have been some sort of trade network going on, or bartering network. So now that's what the archaeologists are trying to figure out. They're trying to figure out how did the interactions go between these two groups. Here's some more stuff they found. They found that in the Upper Paleolithic, people transported obsidians from the Elbrus region and the South Caucasus to the Mesme Cave, which is in the northwest Caucasus. So they're down here, and then so there's a lot going on here, obviously, if you just look at the topography. But they're a group of people living in these southern mountains, and they were transporting stuff to the Mesme Cave, which is where they found those Neanderthal skeletons. And so there must have been some sort of settlement there, probably pretty large if all this stuff is still existing today. So they traveled. This is a big distance over here. So the length of the migration was 250 to 450 kilometers. So here's a big suggestion here. In the Upper Paleolithic, there was already a developed social network between groups of people from different regions. So that was already entrenched. That's the big suggestion here. And if that's true, it opens a whole new can of worms of questioning, and I think worthy questions that should be investigated, because it would answer a lot of questions and clear up the murky picture of the history of humans and our human cousins back deep into the Pleistocene. So one of the archaeologists, he says, the impact of innovations and mechanisms for the dissemination of new technologies is one of the most important tasks of modern research. Our work shows the existence of connections of the population of different regions in antiquity. These results can be widely used in university lectures as well as in modern textbooks. The results of recent studies can be used in the design of expeditions. So basically, a lot of stuff has to be amended or added to the book, so to speak, if this becomes accepted and the evidence starts mounting, which it is. I mean, this whole obsidian thing is super interesting because it's like a natural serial number, so to speak. We could track through the geology where it came from, and from there we can extrapolate where people were living, how they were living, who they were integrating with. So this is like long range integration that have been revealed from these tools, and I think that's super interesting and well worth looking into. And I think this will probably warrant other cultures from other parts of the world that used obsidian. It'll probably warrant other scientists to look into it and see where the common origin was. And it's amazing that no one did this sooner, because they've been sitting on these obsidian tools for a long time. And also, I think it's worth mentioning that people still use obsidian to this day in like medical tools and stuff like that. It's still valuable. So the ancients were on to something if they were still, back then that was cutting edge, and all the way to today. So they had the ability to recognize what was good quality in terms of their tools. And again, I think they're being totally underestimated now. And I think, again, I've said this in many videos regarding Neanderthals that I've done. They got to get more credit. They weren't these brutes. I mean, they probably had something going on, although they had way different genetics than us. I think culturally speaking, they were probably much more advanced than we initially thought they were. And you don't get these types of trade networks or this sort of influence across vast distances if you're a species that has no conception of that sort of abstract thought. So right away, I think there's way more to be investigated, and I think this is a huge step toward elucidating that murky picture of and that mysterious snapshot into humanity just 70,000 years ago. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, and you guys will hear from me tomorrow.